Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're continuing our Last Tyrant Lore Series featuring Dong Zhuo with episode 2 titled Chaos is a Ladder. So we ended our last episode with Dong Zhuo rotting away in a jail cell as he awaited exile following his failed attacks on the Yellow Turban forces. But luckily for him, his replacement, Huang Fusong, was able to crush Zhang Jiao, Zhang Liang, and Zhang Bao in rapid succession, and the war against the Yellow Turbans ended as quickly as it started. This victory put Emperor Liu Hong in a great mood as he declared a universal pardon, which is called 大赦天下, on December 29th of the year 184. This pardon, thanks to Huang Fusong's decisive victory over the Yellow Turbans, spared Dong Zhuo of his exile fate and allowed him to retain a minor position at court. And as a side note, the universal pardon, or 大赦天下, was not an uncommon event, as it often occurred when a new emperor is crowned, a new empress is crowned, or a new son to the imperial family is born. And in this particular case, the pardon corresponded to not only a great victory over the Yellow Turbans, but also the Chinese New Year. But even with this pardon, Dong Zhuo technically shouldn't have another opportunity to rise among the imperial court, as his poor performance against the Yellow Turbans will forever be a black mark on his record. But fate would have it that around the same time that the Yellow Turban Rebellion was wrapping up, a new rebellion out west was just getting started, as a coup led by Beigong Boyu, who was a Qiang auxiliary soldier in the Han army, took control of Jincheng in the Liang province following a dispute over delayed wages. While most of the capital thought this rebellion would die down on its own, many were surprised to learn that the rebellion actually snowballed during the winter month of 184, and by the spring of 185, this band of rebels and defect Han troops are now marching towards Chang'an, which was the original capital of the Western Han dynasty. And since it was the capital, there were still many palaces and, more importantly, tombs of past emperors in this area. So Emperor Liu Hong quickly summoned Huang Fusong to march his forces out of the former Yellow Turban territories and rush to the defense of Chang'an from the approaching rebels. And since Dong Zhuo is from the western parts of the Liang province and has a history of dealing with the western Qiang tribes, he got the position of second in command as he followed Huang Fusong's forces out to Chang'an in the March of 185. For the next 4 months, Huang Fusong's forces would fight to secure the areas around Chang'an, while the Liang rebels largely stayed away from the city and raided the countryside instead. Not certain where the enemy main forces lie, Huang Fusong decided to stay within the city, as he knew his main task was to protect the imperial tombs that scattered around the city side. However, much like how Lu Zhi would lose his job during the Yellow Turban Rebellion, an imperial audit led by a eunuch would arrive in Chang'an in July, and after refusing to bribe the eunuchs, Huang Fusong was fired after a falsified and scathing report of the situation in Chang'an reached the emperor's desk. With this development, Dong Zhuo, for the second time in his life, was thrusted into the command of the army. But unlike his previous appointment, the emperor would not trust him to lead this army this time around, as new commanders were quickly appointed from the capital, much to Dong Zhuo's disappointment. Leading the army this time would be a man named Zhang Wen, who held one of the 2 Grand Excellency positions at the time. Now Zhang Wen was a career bureaucrat who had climbed his way up the ranks thanks to his mentor Cao Teng, who was Cao Cao's eunuch grandfather. So his relationship with the eunuchs have always been great. This also meant he knew the bribery game and played it well, as he got his Grand Excellency position by buying it at the full price of 10 million, unlike Cui Lie, who managed to only pay half the price through his relationship with the emperor's nanny for the other Grand Excellency position at the time, and ended up making enemies on both the scholar and the emperor's side, because on the scholar's side, he bought the job, and on the emperor's side, he skimped out on half the price. With Zhang Wen's appointment, however, you would think that Dong Zhuo would still be at least second in command, but reality proved much starker for Dong Zhuo's case, as Zhang Wen was unfamiliar with Dong Zhuo as a person, so he handpicked the captain of the capital city guards, Yuan Pan, as his second in command instead. And since Zhang Wen didn't have much military experience in the past, he also brought along a career military man in Zhou Shen along as third in command. And this dropped Dong Zhuo all the way to fourth and irritated Dong Zhuo greatly. So when Zhang Wen and the crew arrived in Chang'an, Dong Zhuo threw a tantrum and played the disappearing act, refusing to meet them. Even when Zhang Wen properly summoned him, Dong Zhuo waited half a day before showing up late to the military meeting. This act of moody insubordination crossed the line with another career military man in Zhang Wen's army at the time, as Sun Jian, who was working under Zhou Shen at the time, approached Zhang Wen in front of Dong Zhuo's face and told Zhang Wen that Dong Zhuo's late arrival to a military meeting is punishable by death according to military rules, and that by killing Dong Zhuo on the spot, the lax and arrogant Liang forces that worked under Dong Zhuo would finally learn some discipline. But Zhang Wen, who was still quite new to the business of leading an army, refused Sun Jian's suggestion as he didn't want to kill the only general who actually was familiar with the area on his very first day on the job. But despite this tense first day, Zhang Wen and Dong Zhuo would learn to work together with one another during the next 3 months as they struggled with putting down the rebellion, as the rebel forces have taken a guerrilla approach to the war. It wasn't until November when a meteor shower provided the Han army with a chance to break the enemy. Now, even though meteor showers are rare events, they tend to have no impact on our lives. But for the Qiang tribal people, who are still a bit primitive and superstitious in their beliefs, they viewed this glowing red light that streaked across the night sky as a bad omen. And Dong Zhuo, who had grown up among the Qiang tribes, knew this. So when the meteor shower hit, Dong Zhuo quickly recommended to Zhang Wen to make a push for an all-out counteroffensive the very next day, as the Qiang rebels would have lost the will to fight after such an unnatural event. Sure enough, as the Han forces mounted their counteroffensive, the Qiang tribe showed little resistance, as they were only interested in retreating back towards Jincheng and the western Qiang territories. While the counteroffensive proved quite successful, Zhang Wen and Dong Zhuo would soon have a disagreement over their next step. On one hand, Dong Zhuo suggested that they should combine their force, totaling around 120,000 men at the time, to lay siege to Jincheng and put an end to the rebellion by routing and killing the leadership group of the rebellion that included the likes of Beigong Boyu, Li Wenhou, and Han Sui. However, on the other hand, Zhang Wen hoped to crush all the Qiang uprisings throughout the Liang province in one fell sweep. So he suggested for a divided approach where 6 different pursuit task forces would be in charge of routing the entire Qiang forces throughout the Liang province. And since Zhang Wen was the commander and Dong Zhuo was 4th in command, Zhang Wen's plan won out, and the army was divided, with Zhou Shen and Dong Zhuo taking most of the men, as they each took 30,000. Zhou Shen needed this large force as he was tasked with the impossible task of attacking the city of Jincheng itself, while Dong Zhuo had a large force simply because most of these men were his men, since they were Liang locals or Qiang auxiliary that only wanted to follow Dong Zhuo. The last remaining 60,000 men were divided up into 4 smaller task forces, and everyone launched their attack according to Zhang Wen's plan. Now, we're only going to be focusing on the 2 major task forces, totaling 30,000 men each, as they proved to be most historically significant. On Zhou Shen's side, the attack on Jincheng hit a snag right away, as the enemy simply refused to come out of the city, and the city's unique position on the Yellow River allowed supplies to be constantly ferried into the city. So sieging the city was not going to be possible with the amount of men Zhou Shen had. So at this time, Sun Jian, who was born in the southern commandery of Wu and lived his whole life near the Yangtze River, offered to take a small force of 10,000 men upstream to cut off the enemy's supply route on the river, to force them to come out of the city for a fair fight on the battlefield. But weary of their small force, Zhou Shen turned down Sun Jian's suggestion and insisted on trying to attack the city head-on with all 30,000 of their men. Unfortunately, the enemy force had a similar idea to Sun Jian, as a small band of Qiang raiders snuck out the city in the dark of the night and looped around Zhou Shen's position to cut off Zhou Shen's already overstretched supply line. This move not only isolated Zhou Shen's position, but it also crippled his army as military supplies soon ran out. And taking this opportunity, the Liang rebels launched their own counterattack, and Zhou Shen's forces were shattered as they routed back towards Chang'an after taking heavy losses. At the same time, Dong Zhuo's task force were tasked with taking out the eastern Qiang tribes around a place called Wangyuan, located on the northern banks of the Wei River, slightly due west of Chang'an. However, Dong Zhuo's attack here would also not go well, as we already learned from Dong Zhuo's past experience of commanding during the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Dong Zhuo is simply not a great military commander. And very soon, Dong Zhuo would find his forces surrounded on all sides by enemy cavalry, and knowing that staying in place would only mean a certain death, Dong Zhuo sent his men south toward the Wei River in an effort to build a temporary dam that would slow the river's current and allow them to escape south away from the enemy's cavalry's pursuit. Using the guise that they were fishermen, a small detachment of Dong Zhuo's men were able to successfully dam the Wei River and open up a route for Dong Zhuo's entire force of 30,000 men to escape unscathed. And once they were across the river, they quickly destroyed the dam and cut off the enemy's pursuit as they returned east towards Chang'an. Once back, Dong Zhuo would soon learn that all 6 pursuit teams ended in disaster, and that his 30,000 men were basically all that was left of the Han forces out west, as he was now responsible to defend Chang'an alone. This crushing defeat also meant that the Han forces can no longer send any more men to retake the Liang province, and that the province was essentially lost. For Dong Zhuo, however, his successful retreat was hailed as a major victory by the imperial court, as it preserved a last line of defense for the Han Empire on the western front. And as a reward, Dong Zhuo was given the title of Taixiang Hou, or the second Marquis of Tai County. Now, the Marquis title during the Han Dynasty was not a grant of land, but rather a grant of the tax money that sourced from the land. So essentially, it was a rank reward, and a financial one, for Dong Zhuo. And for those of you interested, a little trivia is that many years later, Ma Chao would actually receive this same exact title from Liu Bei after the formation of the Kingdom of Shuhan, as Tai County was located in the Hanzhong area out west. And with Dong Zhuo's career on the rise, we are also going to end our episode here, as we'll return tomorrow with episode 3, titled The Grand Master. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and see you all next time. Bye!